29. More life, whatever. I don't think it's anything dangerous. Double loss. Let's separate them out. Can't snipe this marker. There. And zealotry pop. Circle extracts. Zealotry, sniper's mark, alright. Circle strats again. Zealotry pop, blast or damage. Yep, just keep doing that, Kosis. Alright, last wave.
I need more mana.
Double boss again. Same thing, we'll separate one out in the corner. Pretty sure that can't kill me, but could get close. Shouldn't risk the accuracy, right? Okay. Kill the rest of this stuff. Kill Kosis. Good. Boom. Deathless.
I need more mana.
You
delirium mirror. Okay.
Stupid beast.
Go fast. I'm not expecting delirium, so we won't get that many should be a decent amount just because of scram, right? We can open all of them because we're freeze and chill immune from Occultist, plus the 90 max res. The Ice Nova can actually hurt us. You don't have to worry about them at all. Usually there aren't that many DD corpses because the shatters from the freeze also helps. So it's pretty safe with strong boxes on this build. To end before timer ran out. I think we'll get maybe like 50 or 60. Like I said, I'm not expecting the delirium stuff. We won't get that many.
When I'm ready, I'm not before.
Hey everybody, sorry for the lack of videos. I haven't really found anything interesting this league to make until now. But lately I've been playing power charge stacking Winter Orb Occultist. I saw a couple of versions that other people are playing, but none of them are very tanky, so I decided to make a tanky one that can do all content in the game. So let's go over the defenses really quickly. The reason why we're tanky is we have 30k base armor, and we also have 90 max res for all the elementals, and then we're close to capped for chaos res. Alright, let's go over the gear really quickly. As far as gear goes, we're using a void battery for power charge stacking, of course. Since we're using a void battery here, obviously our neck is going to be Badger Brotherhood, so we get 10 power charges. We also get 10 max frenzy charges. So for my helmet, we're using a Blizzard Crown for add cold damage. The enchant is +2 max stages to the Winter Orb. I used the Woke Orb for +1 max power charge and -12 nearby cold res. As far as shield goes, I found a synthesized shield with +1 max power charges. The important mods on the shield are the 40% less damage taken from crits and the +2 max cold res. I'll explain why the +2 max cold res is really important later on. As far as our rings go, we have a vermilion ring on our left side. This ring is just life, frostbite on hit, and we have a craft for channeling minus mana cost. This is really important because you need at least one of these in your build probably on either ring, because otherwise you won't be able to channel Winter Orb, because we barely have the mana to support it with -3. Without it, we actually run out of mana basically. eventually if you keep holding it down. Alright, so the ring on the right is just a resistance and life ring. I bought a fractured ring because we used a essence for 4 to 7 added cold per frenzy charge. That's how I crafted this ring. I just spammed the essence on this ring. We hit a pretty good resist. The energy shield roll's sort of dead, but it adds 40 to 70 added cold since we have 10 max frenzy charges. For the chest, I wanted to use the new influence items, so I picked up an incursion mod chest with 110 to 119 life and 8 to 10 max life in one mod. We got increased armor for more armor, and then 2 resistances for the suffixes, and then an open suffix that you can craft whatever you want, really. As far as the implicits we used, +2 max cold res and hatred effect, since we're a cold build. As far as our gloves go, we used the new influence armor again. So with the new influences, we got our cold leech from here, and we also got a nerve on hit, which is very hard to get otherwise, which gives us 10% more damage. The most important mods for the gloves are, there's a incursion mod once again we're using. It's pretty easy to craft that with the new eldritch influence currencies. So we were able to get 30 to 50% increased damage with hits against chilled enemies, which is always since we're a cold build. And then the other important mod is the +2 AoE gems. That's that was made with a unveiled orb, or revealed orb, and we unveiled +2 AoE to gems. That's really important for our auras. And for our boots, we have this very standard onslaught elusive tailwind boots with movement speed and cannot be chilled, but that's doesn't matter since we're occultists and we can't be chilled anyways. But they're just like basic onslaught tailwind elusive boots. My belt is a Stygian belt. We just have big resistances on it and T1 life, some armor too, which helps. As far as a jewel in the middle, it's just damage and life. Alright, we can go over the flask really quickly. For our flask, we're just using a divine flask for corrupted blood. We're using a terrified one, which gives us instant healing if we're at low life. We're using quartz flask for phasing. We have a quicksilver and then a granite flask for big armor. And finally, we have a diamond flask for damage. So the reason why max res is so important in this build is because we are using a new jewel in this build that just got released this week, Melding of Flesh. The reason why we're using a Melding of Flesh is that it makes your max res equivalent for all the max reses, whichever one is highest. We are stacking up max cold res since that is highest. If we push it up to 90, that means lightning and fire res are also 90. It's a bit difficult to fit in. You won't be able to fit this into the build until the very late stages because it also gives -70 all resistance. So you need a lot of resist on your gear to make up for it. But it's worth it because it makes you take, 10% elemental damage from hits and degens and everything. So it makes you very tanky. And then I'm also stacking armor that takes care of the physical attacks, and then we have chaos res for the chaos attacks. So we're a very tanky build. The other important thing about this build is you're probably wondering, where am I getting frenzy charges generation, especially for bosses? I am using a elegant hubris, and I rolled it randomly. We found a frenzy on hit 10% mod. That's how I'm generating all my frenzy charges. It's also giving me lightning resistance here. And this mod over here is actually pretty big. It's 10% damage per power charge, which is 100% damage since we have 10 power chargers. Alright, let's go over our tree really quickly for the build. So for the ascendancy first, we are using malediction for extra curse, and also it gives us 10% reduced damage from enemies, and they take 10% more. We're also using forbidden power. This is how we stack up our power charges and get more damage and more area. We are also using void beacon, and then finally frigid wake for since we are cold damage. We can start up here from the tree. We're going up the left side. I am using Elegant Hubris for the Frenzy on hit. It's not ideal. I just wanted to use this honestly because I was trying to find a way to get Frenzy on hit, and I wanted to use the new implicits for the chest. But ideally, you wouldn't be using this. Ideally, the chest would be a astral plate with Redeemer Frenzy on hit mod, and then you probably get Hunter, spell damage, spell crit base, and probably extra curse finally for the last mod on the prefixes. You can force all that. It's just a very basic chest, but that would be the ideal chest. We are just using this because I wanted to use the new influence modifiers. It's definitely not ideal though, so I would not recommend you copy this setup. But since we are using it, we have Frenzy on hit here to generate our frenzies. We have lightning res here on this node, and we have 10% damage per power charge. This is very important. It gives us a lot of damage actually. We went here for the life nodes, and then going upwards, we are going into our cluster. This is very expensive. This is a very endgame cluster. It's very hard to make, honestly. It's very hard to make. You just mostly spam cold rerolls until you get something close to get this basically. But it's extremely hard to like roll. No, the rolls are very low, like the roll chance, so you might just have to buy this. But this one's pretty important because if you get widespread destruction with the prismatic heart and blanketed snow, we can skip the last two nodes and save 2 points. But this gives us just damage and some resistance, which is really important because we are using Melding of Flesh, which is minus 70 resistance. So we need all the resistance we can get on the tree, really. And Blanketed Snow is just 10 pen, which is very good against bosses. So for our medium clusters, we're using the same one 2 times. This one is Vast Power, which gives us 3% area per power charge. Since we have 10 power charges, that's 30% area. And Towering Threat is just more life and AoE. So in total, this medium cluster gives us 40% AoE. This one on the right side is also the same thing. The other small stats are whatever you can get, really. Doesn't really matter, but just the main 2 nodes are important. As far as my gem here, we just are stacking crit multi, life, and I needed intelligence. The main reason why I have so much int rolls and stat rolls on all this jewels and gears is because of the Elegant Hubris. This makes the nodes give like no stats. They give nothing. So we lost a lot of stats by putting this here. That's why I would not recommend this setup if you are doing this build. But it worked out for me. Took a little work, but it worked out. And for our Watcher's Eye, we are using a Hatred Flat crit chance. We found one that had Consecrated Ground, created by Zealotry, causes enemies to take 10% more damage since we are crit, and since we attack pretty fast with 6 projectiles per Winter Orb attack. We shoot out Consecrated Ground at pretty much everywhere, so that should always be up on the boss. We also have, for defense, 10% of physical damage from hits taken as cold damage while we're using Purity Ice. That can really be any type of aura, to be honest. You can use Purity Ice, Purity of Fire, Purity of Lightning. It really depends on what your shield rolls, to be honest. Because we rolled +2 maximum to cold, we went Purity of Ice, but if it hypothetically rolled you can get 1 to 3. If you got like +3 lightning res, you could just use Purity of Lightning. It doesn't really matter which Purity you use. It's just whatever synergizes with your gear the most. So that gives us 10% of our damage for physical hits turns into 1% because we have 90 all res, right? Alright, so on the right side, we go down here, got the life node, we got the power charge. Of course, we have a, what is it? Life and then corrupted blood on this jewel. And of course, we get all the power charge nodes. Right now, I'm using Cannot Be Shocked because I was farming Simulacrum. But usually you would get the 3% damage. Since you have 10 frenzy charges and 10 power charges, that would give you 60% increased damage usually once you get the power charges up and frenzy charges up. As far as the anoint that we have infused for the power charge over here, since we can't reach it, it's too far, and we are power charge stacking. So up here to the left, we got the crit node for spells. And right here, since I said we were farming Simulacrum, we grabbed the 30% reduced damage from crits. That combined with the shield gives us 70% reduced damage from crits, which makes us very tanky and safe from crits, especially in Simulacrum. Otherwise, I would usually choose the 25% crit multi against unique enemies for bossing. We got the life node here, and then I grabbed all the aura nodes, and we have aura increased effect. That's pretty important because we are stacking quite a bit of aura, like a few auras. We have right now purity of ice, determination, hatred, and our temporary aura is zealotry. And we have herald of ice and defiance banner. Everything benefits from the auras, so it's pretty important. And the strong mastery for us. So we went down here, grabbed the retribution, grabbed the life, went through holy domination, grabbed this life, and we went over here for the jewel and power charge. And then I traveled down here. This is a great spot for Unnatural Instinct. If you can afford one, this right here gives us 12 life, 10% damage, 9% cast speed, 36% area, 20% duration. The duration's just quality of life for Winter Orb. You actually only need 2 nodes. I haven't really felt the need to get anything more than that for duration. 2 nodes has felt really good for me. And yeah, it's just a very good spot for Unnatural Instinct if you can afford it. So we went down here through Constitution, got all the life nodes. We went down here and grabbed +3 max res here for cold. Since we are stacking my max res up to 90. Went over here for some strength nodes since we are lacking a little bit of strength because we need a lot of strength for the determination and for my armor since we are using an armor base that requires quite a bit. Went down here, grabbed the second aura node for mana reservation efficiency. We also went to Soul of Steel. We have a determination efficient mana efficiency right here. This is all really important because with all this and Enlighten, we can fit all my auras in and we have 48 mana to spare. Grab this final life wheel and that's it for the passive tree. Okay, let's go over my gear costs and some starter gear if you're starting this build from scratch. So as far as the cost of the build, currently in my current setup, it probably costs around 100x worth of investment right now to get to where I am. A lot of the cost of the build is honestly the cluster jewel. These are really expensive. I bought them for like 15x, I think. It's very hard to craft one of these large clusters. It's like basically impossible. You just spam cold fossils or cold reforges in the harvest and then hope you get lucky, basically. I was never able to do it, so I just bought one instead. The medium clusters are about 1x each, so they're not too bad. My jewels, I think we bought them for like 2x. They're just double crit multi and life jewels, so they're not too bad, honestly. The Watcher's Eye I bought for 8x for the Zealotry Consecrated Ground. That extra mod is like plus 4x. Originally, I was using just a Hatred and Fizz taking that as cold purity of ice mod Watcher's Eyes. That was just 4x, pretty cheap. But I upgraded since it was for sale. What else we have? We have Unnatural Instinct. Obviously, that's late game. If you have the money to afford it, it's just in a really, really good spot over here. Gets a lot of value. Other than that, the Melding of Flesh, I think it's 1x for the perfect roll or so, but the actual jewels total cost is probably around 40x, mostly in this thing, and the Unnatural Instinct, and the Watcher's Eye. As far as my gear goes, the Void battery is cheap. +1 power charge is not too bad. You can craft this with a Deft and Pristine, or Deft and Cold Fossil is what I used, because I was trying to get max cold res and reduce crit damage. That's all you need to do for that. This helmet probably costs maybe 10x to make, 8 to 10 depending on your luck, really. So you get a Blizzard Crown with the enchant, which costs about 1 to 2x. You roll for a +1 max power charge, and then you have to get a second helmet. You Maven Orb the -9 cold res nearby. You Woke Orb, and then this is what I got basically. As far as body armor goes, I wanted to as I mentioned before, I wanted to use the new influence stuff. That's why we're using the Elegant Hubris for the Frenzy on Hit. But ideally for Frenzy on Hit, there's a couple options. You can use a Redeemer armor, obviously, with a Frenzy on Hit mod. You can also use a Synthesis mod. They're pretty cheap, I think. You can buy a Synth mod, the Frenzy on Hit one, and then you can just craft the chest, whatever you like. The third option is using a Ferrule's Fur to fix your Frenzy generation for bossing on the build. You can get that. You would have to add Aspect of Cat somewhere to your armor or unset ring, and then you would have to use less duration. But I did try a replica Ferrule's Fur. That's really expensive, but I just wanted to try it out for a bit. So that's also a third option for Frenzy generation. As far as the gloves go, you're just looking for Incursion mod with extra damage when they're chilled. You get that, and then you use the new currency to roll the prefixes. If you really have money, like I said, +2 AoE gems is pretty important for max res. You can do suffixes cannot change, and then Veiled Chaos Orb, and then you hope you unveil AoE gems. I blocked conversion because there's a bunch of conversion mods that would be bad for the build. They're useless. And then I just crafted life right there. As far as the boots goes, they're just your standard elusive onslaught tailwind boots. You don't really need it. Just I Maven Orbed it for quality of life, just for max clear speed, but pretty expensive, I would say, my boots, but you don't really need them. So I added a Badge of Brotherhood. That's pretty cheap. It's like core item to build. The Vermilion ring is mostly just a frostbite. Amethyst ring. I bought the base for 2x, and then we just essence crafted. I think it took me like 10 to hit this. The belt is just like you just randomly hit the resist and high life belt. Everything else about the build is not really important. So I would say around 100x total for my build at this point. We have a starter set of gear right here, and I have a starter tree in the POB. It's pretty basic. You just buy 2 void batteries, get alt roll for the power charge +1, and then whatever you get get crafted life probably is good enough for starting. Like the armor, like I said, get hybrid. Try to use a hybrid armor. The colors are pretty difficult to roll if you go on a pure strength armor base, right? If you do a pure armor base, it's fairly hard to roll since you need 5 off colors. So I would recommend you use like some kind of hybrid armor, like either evasion armor or energy shield armor, just so it's easier to roll until you can get the colors for the astral plate for the end game for your ideal chest. For gloves, incursion mod, that's all you need. You can roll the implicits for our leech there and a nerve on hit. For boots, I would use replicas Inya's Epiphany. That's what I used when I was leveling up the build before I made my elusive onslaught boots. The rings are just life resist, same thing with Stygian, and that's it. You should be able to get this build started around 5x. The very late upgrades, I would say, Cluster Jewel is probably the last upgrade. Unnatural Instinct's also one of the last upgrades. Those two are probably the last upgrades. Everything else about the build is not too expensive, but those jewels for sure. Anyways, thanks for watching. I'm gonna leave you guys with a fear kill at the end. If you have any other questions, hit me up in Twitch or Discord. Alright. Increased area, extra, cooldown. %. Yes.
When I'm ready, and not before.
Yeah, let's kill MJ first. Don't want to fight Kayla. Just want to kill MJ first. And she's dead. I'm gonna kill the next two together. Who is it? Cortex, okay. Killed him too fast. I get Cortex first. Shaper, just Uber Elder. Kill Shaper right there. And just Elder. Nice. Take some good drops.